In our previous video, we filled out the top flap of section number 7 and we reviewed how to complete the square for a quadratic equation in standard form to change it to vertex form. Now we're going to see how these skills that you learned from a previous unit apply now to completing the square for a circle. So now we're on the bottom flap of section number 7. Our essential question is, how do I change a circle equation from general to standard form by completing the square? Remember, class, a general form equation of a circle tells us nothing about the circle. We cannot figure out what the center is. We don't know what the radius is. But if we can change it to standard form, now we can easily find the center and radius. We're going to use completing the square to do that. So follow along as we practice this. Go ahead and write down this equation over on the left side. X squared plus y squared minus 8x plus 2y plus 8 equals 0. Notice the similarity in our steps. Step number 1, put the terms in proper order. Now proper order means you put the x terms first. We start with x squared, and then I'm going to cross that off as I go so I don't miss anything. Then the next term will be the same x value, the x variable, but it'll be the b term. Then we're going to go ahead and put in there y squared, and the next value will be the b term for the y value, and then we're going to put the constant there and set that equal to 0. So we put the terms in proper order. Next step, move the constant to the right side. So this positive 8 needs to go to the other side. So we're going to rewrite this as x squared minus 8x plus y squared plus 2x equals, that sign's going to change to negative because we moved to the other side of the equal sign. Next step, let's identify what our b values are. You know, class, I should have drawn this a little lower here, so I'm going to just drag this down a little bit so we have room to identify our b values. Alright, let's take a look. It's like our b value for x terms is negative 8, so b is equal to negative 8, and our b value for our y terms equal to positive 2. We're going to need these b values in a moment. Okay, next step, complete the square. But now we're going to complete the square for both the x quadratic and the y quadratic. Notice that for a circle we've got y squared and x squared. In a quadratic equation we just had x squared. The y value was not squared. Alright, let's complete the square. So we're going to go ahead and write out our equation. Make sure you write it small enough, class, so you have room for all this. X squared minus 8x plus some number plus y squared plus 2x plus some number is equal to, here's our negative 8 over here, it's equal to negative 8 plus some number plus some number. Remember, whatever we add to the left side, we have to add to the right side. So if we're going to add 2 things to the left side, we got to add those same 2 things to the right side. Well, what are those things going to be? Well, we already learned this. We find that value with b over 2 squared. Since the b value for the x terms is negative 8, we're going to put in negative 8 divided by 2 squared. Negative 8 over 2 is negative 4 squared. Negative 4 squared is positive 16. So we're going to fill out 16 here and 16 here. Let's go ahead and find our value for the y terms. We've got b over 2 squared is equal to, the b value is 2, so 2 over 2 squared. 2 over 2 is 1, so 1 squared equals 1. So our number here is going to be 1 and 1. So we've just completed the square for the x terms and the y terms. Alright, next step, write our final equation. We can actually finish up right here. On the left side, we're going to factor, and I'll put this in parentheses so you see this. We're going to factor these 3 terms, and we're going to factor these 3 terms. And on the right side, we're going to simplify those 3 terms. So let's go ahead and finish this up. Factoring this side, we know it's going to be x some number squared plus y some number squared is equal to negative 8 plus 16 is positive 8. Positive 8 plus 1 is positive 9. So we simplified the right side. How do we find this blank? We already know from our previous practice. It's b over 2. So for the x terms, b over 2, b was negative 8. Negative 8 over 2 is equal to negative 4. We've got a negative 4 here. And for the y side, same thing. b over 2, we found that our b value was 2. 2 over 2 equals positive 1 plus 1. Class, you have just changed this crazy general form of a circle to standard form. For what reason? Well, so we can find the center and the radius. The center is easy to find here. The center is, we flip the sign of h, that's 4. We flip the sign of k, that's negative 1. There's the center of our circle. And how do we find the radius? Well, we know that this 9 is equal to r squared because you know the standard form of a circle has r squared in this spot. That means we know that r squared equals 9. If we square root both sides, we know that r is equal to 3. And I don't have a unit of measure, so I'll write just 3 units. So now we know the center and radius, we could plot this circle. Alright, let's do one more practice. I suggest at this point you stop the video and try the next one on your own and then just follow along with my steps and see if you're getting the right answer. If you just copy this, class, you're not really learning whether you know how to complete the square or not. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to start. I would pause the video if I were you right now and try to move ahead of me. Alright, first step, put the terms in proper order. X squared. We're going to now put our x variable that's not squared. Next is y squared. Next is our y variable that's not squared. And then our constant equals 0. Next step, move the constant to the right side. We have to get rid of that number so it doesn't interfere with our completing the square. We just move it over and get it out of the way. Negative 12 turns to positive 12 when we move it. I made the mistake again of writing this a little too high on the line. I want to be able to identify my b values. So my b value here for the x terms is negative 2. My b value for the y terms is 6. Let's underline those so we see them. In fact, I'm going to go back and underline them over here so we can see those as well. Alright, next step, let's complete the square. We're going to write this whole thing with some blanks. X squared minus 2x plus some number plus y squared plus 6y plus some number. And I just realized something, class. I made a mistake over here. I put an x here. This was supposed to be a y, so you should correct that. It should be 2y. And I actually did it here as well. Huh, I noticed that too. Whoopsie. So this should be 2y. So make a correction there. Okay, let's go back. Y squared plus 6y plus some number is equal to 12 plus some number plus some number. We find that number by the expression b over 2 squared. Our b value here is negative 2 over 2 squared. Negative 2 over 2 is negative 1 squared. Negative 1 squared changes to positive 1. There's our first value. Alright, let's find the value for the y terms. B over 2 squared is equal to 6 over 2 squared. 6 over 2 is 3 squared equals 9. So our number in this blank is 9. Alright, next step. Let's factor the first 3 terms, factor the next 3 terms, and simplify the right side. So we factor these, we're going to end up with x some value squared plus y some value squared is equal to 12 plus 1 is 13, plus 9 is 22. So we got that part done. How do we find this value for the x terms? It's b over 2. b over 2, b is negative 2 over 2. This is negative 1. And for the y terms, we've got b over 2 is equal to 6 over 2, which is equal to 3, positive 3. We have now completed the square for this general form equation. We've changed it to standard form. Let's go ahead and finish up by explaining why we did this. We want the center, and the center is at h, which is 1. Flip the sign. K is negative 3. Flip the sign. And now let's take a look at our radius. We know in this case 22 is equal to r squared. So r squared equals 22. So the radius is equal to the square root of 22 units. Remember, you don't have to change this to a decimal unless you want to graph it. So the radius here is just the square root of 22 units. So now you've had 2 practice problems on how to change a general form circle equation to standard form.